Hey, Bob Nolan here with Thought Provokers, bringing provocateuring to new levels of disturbance and even controversy. Watch out now. This one might even be practical. Instead of asking how often you need diplomacy to navigate your life, maybe a better question is, do you ever have a day when you don't need it? Whether it's asking a guest to pass the salt and pepper, or appealing to a father for the honor of marrying his lovely daughter, diplomatic behavior tips the balance between success and failure. Yes? Like the business ad says, you don't get what you want, you get what you negotiate. The wisest persons I know have mastered personal diplomatic skills. Others just don't get it, or maybe they don't care. All of us can improve. It says that the man Jesus was full of grace and truth. Would it be a stretch to interpret that verse to say he had a handle on diplomacy? There were plenty of law preachers in his day who could slice up the unsuspecting with hard truths from the Bible, sort of like today. But there was an ambassador from heaven, an interpreter of God, who showed up to explain things with never before heard diplomacy. Grace, truth. Those two words express the irreducible minimums of a diplomat. An ambassador assigned to a nation by a president is required by his or her very job description to know the culture and nuances of communicating effectively with a certain people group. Right? To not understand ways of greeting, negotiating, and even eating together would be a disqualifier for anyone desiring that assignment. The art, I said art, of diplomacy means the ability to communicate even unpleasant truths to the hearer without transmitting personal or cultural offense. With whom do I not need diplomacy? In disciplining a child, confronting a dishonest client, planning a wedding, debating theology, negotiating a purchase, especially when the stakes are high or personal problems exist. Combining grace and truth involves not only the essentials of sincerity and integrity, but also skill. You may not have time to walk a mile in the other person's shoes, but to communicate hard truths effectively requires diplomacy. If you desire to get your point across, and heard, that is, if your goal is just to make your point or win an argument, maybe you don't want to expend the energy required to exercise diplomacy. But if your purpose is to open doors of communication, to be trusted, to lay a foundation for common ground, then it's well worth all the time and energy you have to spare. Now, we're not referring here to beating around the bush or flattery. In diplomacy, truth is as required as grace. And grace is as required as truth. It's that skillful, wise, patient willingness to meet a person right where they are and to speak on their terms, on their turf, and even by their rules that qualifies you to speak with diplomacy. You can't demand, I can't demand to be trusted. Trust gets built over time, right? And by the way, the first impression you give may be the only opportunity you have to make an impression. I hope you'll stay tuned for part 2 of Divine Diplomacy. I'd like to show you the most unread, unappreciated, and underrated scripture in the New Testament. I'm Bob Nolan with Thought Provokers.